The humiliation happened in broad daylight, beneath warm string lights meant for celebration, not cruelty, and it unfolded so quietly at first that most people didn't realize they were witnessing a moment that would change many lives forever. An elderly woman stood trembling on a wooden platform in the town square, her thin hands clutching a small German Shepherd puppy to her chest, while a uniformed sheriff pointed at her like she was a criminal. Laughter rippled through the crowd, cameras lifted, whispers spread, and somewhere far away, across oceans and battlefields, her son had no idea his mother's dignity was being stripped away in public. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for the powerless, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Her name was Evelyn Carter, and she had lived in that small town for over 60 years. She raised her children there, buried her husband there, and volunteered at the local shelter long after her knees began to ache and her eyesight faded. The town knew her as harmless, gentle, and quiet. But the men humiliating her that evening, Sheriff Raymond Holt, saw her as an easy target. He had built his reputation on authority and fear, not justice, and everyone knew it. Complaints disappeared. Fines doubled without explanation. And those who dared question him often found themselves publicly shamed, just like Evelyn was now. The accusation was simple but devastating. The sheriff claimed she had stolen the puppy from a police dog training program, waving paperwork in the air as if it were proof beyond doubt. In truth, Evelyn had adopted the puppy legally from a shelter 2 towns away, hoping the little dog might bring warmth back into her lonely house. But Sheriff Holt wasn't interested in truth. He was interested in control. He mocked her age, her shaking hands, and her confusion, forcing her to hold up adoption papers while the crowd murmured. The puppy whimpered softly, sensing her fear, and Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. What no one there knew was that Evelyn's son, Daniel Carter, had been away for nearly 3 years. A Navy SEAL, he operated in shadows, his missions classified, his life defined by silence and sacrifice. Evelyn never spoke about his work. She simply said he was serving the country, and that was enough for her. Every night she prayed for his safety, folding her hands beneath a faded photograph of him in uniform. On that very evening, Daniel was finally on his way home, discharged after a brutal final deployment that left scars deeper than anyone could see. The humiliation escalated when Sheriff Holt ordered the puppy taken from her arms. The deputy hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but fear of the sheriff outweighed compassion. As the puppy was pulled away, Evelyn's knees nearly gave out. The crowd watched, some recording, some laughing nervously, others looking away in shame. The sheriff declared loudly that this was what happened when people broke the law, even little old ladies. His words echoed in the square, sinking into Evelyn like cold rain. What followed was a silence heavier than the insults. Evelyn stood alone, empty-handed, her face pale, her shoulders hunched, and in that moment she looked smaller than she had ever looked in her life. No one stepped forward. No one defended her. The sheriff smirked, satisfied, and turned away as if he had just completed an ordinary task. He had no idea that the story was far from over. The change began quietly, as most powerful changes do. A man in civilian clothes stood at the edge of the crowd, unnoticed by most. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his posture rigid with discipline even after years of war. His eyes were locked on Evelyn, and something in his chest tightened painfully. Daniel Carter had arrived home early, hoping to surprise his mother. Instead, he arrived just in time to witness her humiliation. The sight hit him harder than any battlefield loss. This was the woman who taught him right from wrong, who worked double shifts to put food on the table, who waved with a brave smile every time he left for deployment. And now she stood broken in public, crushed by a man abusing his power. Daniel didn't rush forward. Years of training held him back. He observed. He listened. He watched the sheriff's body language, the crowd's reaction, the way authority was being twisted into cruelty. And as he stood there, something else became clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern. Whispers around him spoke of similar moments, other victims, other humiliations swept under the rug. Daniel realized that what his mother endured was only the surface of something far darker. That night, Daniel walked his mother home in silence. He didn't reveal himself at first. He simply stayed close, making sure she wasn't alone. When she finally reached her porch, he stepped into the light. Evelyn froze, disbelief washing over her tired face before collapsing into tears of relief. For the first time since the square, she cried openly, her strength finally giving way. Daniel held her carefully, feeling how fragile she had become, and in that moment, his mission became clear. The next days were not marked by violence or confrontation, but by patience and precision. Daniel helped his mother file formal complaints, gathering every piece of evidence he could. He spoke to townspeople quietly, earning trust not through intimidation, but through listening. Stories poured out, illegal seizures, threats, bribes, public shaming. Many had been too afraid to speak before. But something about Daniel's calm presence, his quiet strength, made them feel safe. Sheriff Holt, unaware of the storm forming around him, continued his routine. He strutted through town, confident in his untouchable status. But cracks began to show. Anonymous tips reached state investigators. Old cases were reopened. Video footage from the square circulated online, drawing attention far beyond the town's borders. Public pressure mounted, and suddenly, the sheriff found himself under scrutiny he couldn't intimidate away. Evelyn watched all this unfold with mixed emotions. She felt guilt for being the catalyst, fear of retaliation, and disbelief that her son was at the center of it all. Daniel reassured her daily, reminding her that standing up for dignity was never wrong. Slowly, Evelyn began to reclaim pieces of herself. She walked taller. She smiled again. And one afternoon, Daniel surprised her by bringing home a familiar little German Shepherd puppy, adopted legally and officially returned to her arms. This time, the town applauded. The climax came on a quiet morning when state officials arrived unannounced at the sheriff's office. The arrest was swift and public, mirroring the humiliation he once inflicted on others. As Sheriff Holt was led away, the crowd gathered again, but this time, there was no laughter. There was silence, heavy and reflective. People realized that power, when unchecked, could rot a community, and that courage often arrived in the form of ordinary people refusing to stay silent. In the weeks that followed, the town changed. New leadership promised transparency. Community meetings replaced whispered complaints. Evelyn became a symbol, not of weakness, but of resilience. She never sought attention, but people sought her out, thanking her for her quiet bravery. Daniel remained by her side, declining praise, reminding everyone that the true strength came from collective action, not individual heroics. As Daniel prepared to leave town and begin a quieter life, he stood once more in the square where it all began. The lights glowed warmly again, no longer mocking but welcoming. Evelyn sat nearby, the puppy asleep at her feet, her face peaceful. The scars of that day would never fully fade, but they no longer defined her. They had become part of a larger story, a story of dignity restored and justice reclaimed. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel anger, hope, or inspiration, please take a moment to like the video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep stories of courage and compassion alive. And before this story ends, I ask you to leave a comment with just one word that describes how this story made you feel. Because sometimes, the quiet strength of an elderly woman and the silent resolve of her son are enough to remind us all that no matter how powerful corruption may seem, truth and courage will always find their way home.